Good morning, everybody. Contemporary Issues class. Nice to have you here on a sunny December Sunday. We're going to talk about kindness today. You all know that Rev Martin preached a sermon series on Micah 1:6, I think it was, about do justice, kindness, and walk humbly with God. And so I remember the one Sunday that Mark talked about kindness was interesting. And I thought there were aspects that I'd like to delve into and just have us talk for an hour about it, because it is obviously an imperative that we are supposed to do as Christians. And so why don't we talk about it a little more? Before we do that, Zoomers, nice to have you here. Please mute yourself on the lower left corner of your screen when you're not talking. And we are recording this for future playback. And other announcements. Yes, Carrie.
I just wanted to publicly thank Vicki and Alice
Yeah.
and their spouses for the lovely party and time.
Yeah, it
The
was.
hard work that you did. It was just fun, and things were delicious, and it was obvious that you put time in. So thank you.
It's a good excuse for us to get together. and have
That's right.
Still, we were the beneficiaries. And we're grateful. Thank you.
That's women power. That's
Yeah.
women
Girl
power.
power, that's
What
right.
happens when women? put their hands
Primordial
together?
power.
That's what it is.
That's what Mark said.
Yeah, Mark talked about it. It's girl power today.
I wonder how he knew. Did he sit in on some of these?
Yeah. Oh, no, he's probably witnessed it at
Yeah.
times.
Sure.
Well, you know, Garrison Keeler said that writing his, when he was, when he was acceptable to more people.
Yeah.
That most of what he wrote about was listening to women talk. That was his-
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's,
Yeah.
That's kind of scary.
He told some good jokes too.
he was good. I kind of miss his show. Lake Wobegon. Yeah.
Where all the women are strong and all the men are good looking and all the children are above average.
Very good. Very good. Anything's in the news we'd like to comment on? I thought it was nice to see that Brittany Griner woman released from Russia, even though they didn't get the other man who was there. And other people, how many are there across the world that have put in prison?
And it's
That we don't hear about?
Yeah, it's like 58 different countries.
That many?
Are there? Is that right?
Well, you know, that means there's an open dialogue somewhere
Yeah.
behind the
Yes.
scenes we don't know about, and that's good.
Mhm.
Yeah, the New Mexico Governor Richardson is, it's always in the news. He brought somebody back from North Korea.
Oh, really? The New Mexico governor.
A decade
North
ago.
Korea.
Yeah.
There's a lot of them that are. And what a good reminder, when you travel, don't take stuff that could get you into trouble. Because she had marijuana or something related
It's
to
the size
that.
of a raisin.
Cannabis oil.
Cannabis oil,
In her
yeah.
vape. No harm.
Anything that can get you into trouble. Okay, let's talk about kindness.
And Russian arms.
I'd love to hear your stories about it today too.
We can't miss the
So,
World Cup.
The World Cup, yes. Watching the World Cup. Yeah, go Argentina and Croatia.
They're gonna play Croatia
Yeah.
Very good.
Tuesday.
And go Broncos today and go Chiefs.
Who are you married to?
Well, we're being-
Yeah.
You had to mention the Broncos.
We're from Kansas City, so we're big
Well,
Chiefs fans.
You know what, but we've learned our lesson. We kind of go with the fear and trepidation, you know, you never know when
That's
it can
right.
turn, you know, so, yeah,
Yes.
we hope we win. but-
That's
I would go to the game just to watch the Broncos.
I know,
Yeah.
he
right.
is something else.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to hear your stories about kindness today and your thoughts here too. So jump in whenever you want to. Kindness is defined in the Webster's Dictionary as behavior marked by acts of generosity or consideration or rendering assistance or concern for others. And of course, a famous Bible verse is Ephesians 4:32. Be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other just as Christ forgave you. And then one little thing that I found in searching the internet, the kindness of early Christians changed the Roman culture. In the early 300s, famine and war and plague afflicted the city of Caesarea. The populace began fleeing the city, which was one of the larger ones in the Roman Empire, for the safety of the countryside. But in the midst of the fleeing inhabitants, at least one group stayed behind, the Christians. As bishop of the city and a historian of the early church, Eusebius wrote that during this plague, all day long, these Christians tended to the dying and to their burial, countless numbers with no one to care for them except these Christians. Others gathered together from all parts of the city, a multitude of those withered from famine, and they distributed bread to them all. The Christians' deeds were on everyone's lips, and they glorified the God of the Christians. A few decades later, the last pagan emperor there, Julian, recognized that the Christian practice of compassion was one cause behind the transformation of the Christian faith from a small movement on the edge of the empire to its cultural ascendancy. I had never heard that story, that it was the kindness during that time that propelled the Christian faith and appealed to so many people. So in a world where you can be anything, be kind. I think we've heard and seen that a lot.
No.
So why be kind? It is our Christian command. It's also instinctive, and it helps society by cooperation, by people learning to cooperate. Psychology.com says that empathy is instinctive. Human brains are wired for empathy because we associate those near us, like friends and family members, so closely with ourselves that it stands to reason that when we cheer someone else up, it makes us feel good too. It creates a vicarious feeling. It's also attractive. A 1980 study by psychologists found that kindness ranked above physical attractiveness when people seek a mate. Psychologists said that this is a sign, probably a good sign from genes, that we are genetically trying to cooperate and foster kindness. Kindness also creates social connection. Psychologist says kindness is the social glue that connects individuals within a community. An example is the Amish, who join and build barns for each other. It's part of their social cohesion of their culture.
And shakers.
And Shakers also, Eric, is that right?
Yeah.
It's more than a pleasing behavior. It's a way to connect people and communities together. And it's also a way to create our own identity, whether it's giving up your seat on a bus or helping someone in another way. Most of us want to think of ourselves as kind, so acting in that way reinforces our sense of identity as kind people, psychologists say. It gives us a warm, fuzzy feeling to do acts of kindness. Psychologists refer to this as moral elevation and can help explain why kindness is catching. According to research in the US Journal of Personality, even reading about kind acts can elicit moral elevation and makes us more likely to follow suit. And examples of kindness. The Jewish concept of the mitzvah calls for all Jews to be kind. Judaism teaches that the world is built on kindness. The Kabbalistic teaching sees kindness as emerging from 7 divine emotional attributes. So it's another part of the Jewish teaching. Kindness must be balanced and considered with mercy also for the undeserving. And of course, in the New Testament, there's the parable of the Good Samaritan that's held up so often. There's the paragon of kindness about the traveler who's stripped and beaten, left half dead on the roadside. First, a Jewish priest goes by and ignores him, and the Levite goes by, and finally, a Samaritan, whom the Jews despised at the time, shows kindness and helps the injured person. So it's a prime example to model how to act kindly toward those and understand even those that we disagree with, we can be kind towards. Any other great examples that you think of? One thing I wanted to look at was the pay it forward concept, which has really become kind of a national and international movement.
It's
In
fun too.
Pardon me?
I've done it a lot of times.
You've done that a lot? Okay, we're gonna talk about that. 1999, a novel came out called Pay It Forward and was then adapted into a 2000 film of the same name, starring Kevin Spacey and Helen Hunt. It described an obligation to do 3 good deeds for others in response to a good deed that you've received. Such good deeds should accomplish things that the other person cannot accomplish on their own, the book described. And in this way, good deeds spread geometrically through society at a ratio of 3 to 1, shown by the diagram. This became the Pay It Forward Foundation, founded in the US, but then went worldwide. The foundation started having Pay It Forward bracelets. And since then, over 1 million of the bracelets have been distributed in 100 countries. And many countries started their own Pay It Forward programs. Several companies have also adopted the Pay It Forward approach as a model, including Karma Kitchen, where patrons come in and pay for the meals, next meals that they do. There's also one in Denver. Has
Yeah.
anybody been to the one
Graceful
in Denver?
Cafe.
Graceful Cafe. Yeah, they came and talked to us. Right, so you can come in and pay for your own meal and then pay for another one for somebody that comes in that's needy. And some economic researchers have also tried to adapt economic models based on this concept that could be tried in states and countries. So tell us about Pay It Forward. Who's done it? What have you done, Steve, when you've done that?
Best
Starbucks?
memory, I don't do Starbucks. It's at a powwow, just every powwow I ever go to, especially ones out of Tallbull, I just hand the 20 and say, the next 4 people get in free.
Good for you.
That's my favorite one.
That's great.
And you need to finish that sentence, random act of senseless kindness.
Of senseless kindness. Yeah, we're gonna get to that
I
too.
bought groceries.
Yeah.
Someone in front of me fumbling to get enough money, and I say, here, it's on me.
That's great.
It's easy to do. That's why you carry cash.
Some of us still carry cash. That's right. Has anybody else done that or been a recipient of that kind of thing in a drive-through? Yeah, anybody, go ahead.
I was a recipient last summer, a bridge group that I belong to, that we had not played through the whole pandemic. And we had some money from the down pot, and we were all going out to lunch. And there were 8 of us, 8 old ladies, having lunch in a restaurant up in Evergreen. And we ate, and we had the money to pay for it from this pot. That's why we were going out. And we went to pay the bill, and we were told it had already been paid by some man in the restaurant for all 8 of us.
Wow.
Wow.
We paid our lunch.
Oh, my.
Wow.
So we had to go out again to spend the money.
Good one.
As women do.
But that was so nice of him.
Susie's got her.
Sharon and I were out to dinner about 2 years ago, and there was a man and his son. He was like a teenager, or maybe
a little bit younger.
yeah, maybe 10, 13 or 10 or
Middle
something.
school age.
But the tables were pretty close, so we were chitty chatting, where you go to school and this and that. So when we went to pay the bill, the dad had paid the bill, and we're like, please, you don't have to do it. Because we were, and he goes, no, I want an example for my son.
Oh, that's great.
That was so nice of you, thank you. So, yeah, that was really nice.
It was just the man and his son that
just the two of them, it was a lesson.
Yeah. it
What
was
a nice
lesson for the son.
thing for him
Really
to
nice. Mhm.
show for the son too.
I don't know if this is technically a pay it forward type thing, but on Veterans Day, I was in a Italian restaurant across the street from my hotel in Omaha, Nebraska. Went to pay my bill, and the people next to me had already paid for my dinner at the Italian restaurant, because somehow or another I had mentioned that, that I was a veteran.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, very good. Sharon and then Jean.
I work out at the USO, which is the servicemen's organization in the USO. Every now and then. Airport. At the airport, every now and then there's one traveler comes in, I don't know what his relationship is, but he always hands us an envelope. And it's got $20 to $40 in it. He says, give this to the next enlisted person. So you have, I get to select who I give it to, which is, but it's so nice to see that, and the look on their face.
Yeah.
Shocking.
Shocking.
It's really nice.
That's good. That's great. Jean.
Oh, maybe about 25 years, 30 years ago, something like that, Highway 85, going towards Greeley, Colorado.
Yeah.
Ran out of gas. And for about an hour at least, cars just whizzing by. There I was just standing there with a disabled vehicle, and that was before cell phones and so forth.
Yeah.
So I was really going back. Finally, a Mexican couple, husband and wife who didn't speak English, stopped, picked me up, took me down to a filling station, brought me back with a couple gallons of gas. So that kind of stayed with me. She didn't speak English, but they stopped for me. So like the Good Samaritan.
Like Mark was saying, people with the least often give the most.
Yes, that's true.
Very good. Benjamin Franklin even wrote about this concept in 1784. He wrote in a letter to a friend, I was glad to lend you this sum of money, but you must pay me back by lending this sum to another person you find who needs it. I enjoin you to discharge this debt by helping the next person that you find. This is a trick of mine of doing a good deal with little money. He said. Yeah. And then also the pay it forward concept is in Matthew 18:21, where Jesus told the parable of the king that forgave the debt of the man that cried to the king and said, show mercy on me. But then that man went out and found someone on the street that owed him a debt, and he did not extend that mercy to that person. So the king then threw the man in jail and said, you shall learn to forgive other people who are in your debt. So maybe that's where the concept came from. Trying to pay it forward. Yes.
Steve,
Go ahead.
I think that kindness is a choice. I don't think sometimes, sometimes it's just, it happens, you do it and it happens, but I think sometimes I've had to choose to be kind before, and a lot of times working with the public, you have to put on a spirit of kindness. I think even though people are not kind back, and I find especially like this time of year, when things are hectic and everybody's in a hurry and
Prices are so high.
oh, just, well, it's just a, whisper under your breath, be kind, be kind,
Vicky
Does that
works-
work?
Well,
Vicky works 3 days a week at a post office branch in a strip shopping center in Parker. So she does the cashier and takes the packages, and so she's found
Stressful job.
some people nice and some people not so nice. these times.
and
Better than the airport.
kindness does breed kindness, I think, except in some cases, there's just some people that you just can't, you can be kind to them, but they're it's not in there.
Yeah.
They just can't. be
And what
kind.
do you do with that?
Well, I usually just bite my lip, you know, and hurry through the procedure and then just get on with the next person. I have before just said to myself, you know what, enough, you know, and made I've tried to make a direct contact in a kind way, you know, but, but you know, everybody is just like, it's right under the surface for them to explode, you know, I mean, you know, so anyway, but for the majority of the part, people are kind, you know, but I find it's a choice. You have to choose to be kind, you know, in lots of situations.
You know, what I've started doing since the pandemic is, when I walk down the halls for church, I smile at everyone.
Yes.
Whether I know them or not. If they make eye contact with me, I'll say, well, hello,
Yeah.
it's good to see you today. And people will stop and say, thank you for just saying hello
Yeah.
to me. And then I read that they asked Mother Teresa. And Mother Teresa said the best thing you can do is smile at me. Because some people rarely get a smile. They're so isolated and it doesn't cost anything. And it is a choice. It is a choice. And I've had people, I had one person say, well, why are you smiling at me? And I said, I just wanted to acknowledge you today and say hello. And and then just walked on. I mean, some people probably won't respond, but most people will.
They say that's the best makeup you can put on them.
Right.
I'd be interested in the class's response, Steve. Mary and I have had some conversations in recent times that there seems to be an upturn on kindness in our society. I don't know if it's been COVID or what's going on in Ukraine or just what's going on with all the negative political stuff that we've been saturated with. But we have encountered, it seems like, more kindness in recent times, and you're in the postal service where there's a lot of rushing and time and et cetera and so forth to be in the essence.
Yeah.
But we've seen an uptick. I don't know if the rest of you have detected, maybe people are trying harder to be kind to one another, but we've certainly experienced some things in recent times which seems to have elevated our appreciation for humankind. The people are trying a little harder today, and I don't know if the rest of you.
I'm
think
not
that's
sure
just
that's true.
rose-colored
in the
glasses or
highways,
no?
Yeah, that's where it is.
I'm finding what I'm looking for.
Maybe that's true, but on the highways, I'm not so sure.
Oh, that's a
Well,
mess.
right.
That's another story.
That's one of the many, that's a good point. One of the many places we have to show kindness. John?
I'd like to just ask about motivation. What is your motivation for being kind? Or is it just your nature? Or are you being kind because you're commanded to by some scripture or something? But really what I'm trying to say is my dad, very kind, and he taught me to be kind. And I internalized it, so it's my nature. But he said, basically, it doesn't count unless you're doing it for someone that can't help you.
If you're doing it for.
Doing it to get paid.
That's a transaction.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
That's a transaction if you expect something in return.
No quid pro quo.
anonymously if possible.
And you know, practicing grace, something that's undeserved. So when someone is especially nasty to you and you find it in yourself to return kindness when it's not deserved,
Yes.
whatever that is.
Yeah.
I just call that practicing grace because I've had people be kind to me on days when maybe I overlooked things or whatever, right? And so that's paying it forward itself, is practicing that grace with someone, knowing that's just how we live in a society where we're helpful to each other and
Well, the Talmud, the Old Testament Jewish scripture, the highest form is when the gift is unknown or anonymous. So it kind of relates to Carrie, what you were talking about. Highest form charity is when it's an anonymous gift.
I had a customer come in yesterday and there was a line outside the door before I even unlocked the door. And I was scheduled to work by myself yesterday. And so anyway, I don't know, midway through the morning, a lady came up to me and she said, I just can't believe they didn't schedule someone else to work with you. And I'm helping her, and she goes, and I just said, well, my boss, I said, I'm going to call my boss as soon as I get a minute, but I didn't have a minute to stop what I was doing because it was one right after another, so I said, well, I'm gonna call my boss when I get a minute and she'll come in. And so anyway, I finished the transaction and she said, well, I'm impressed that you're able to stay so good natured through all this, and I just went, next.
At least you didn't look at your watch.
Yeah, that's right. I have 5 minutes with you. Let's get this over. So, but oh man, and until really she came in about 11 o'clock and I don't think I really got weary until it was like time to close. And then, you just kind of go, how did I do that? So, but I thought that was interesting because she was upset. And she said, I just can't believe it, and she said, well, thanks, next.
Steve, and then I'll talk a little bit about teaching kindness.
Back in the 70s, when they had ping pong diplomacy with China, there was a long-haired guy from the States, and he was described as having breezy friendliness. That term has stuck with me ever since. That's why when I'm on the 10-speed, I'm always smiling at people.
Good.
Breezy.
Very good. Psychology Today magazine says kindness can be taught by modeling and by direct teaching. Children especially can be taught, but not so much with adults. We're set in our way. We can do it by volunteering, speaking compliments, donating money, and just showing manners as kindness. Kindness is most often effectively taught from parents to children and through observation and direct teaching. Studies have shown that programs, even intervention kindness action, can be taught effectively in the first 20 years of life. After that, the effectiveness goes down. Surprisingly, kindness is not present as a course in most schools or institutions. Some think that it should be.
I needed to watch Mr. Rogers.
Mr. Rogers, that's right. We'll talk about that too. One of the most best ways to teach kindness is by being intentional. Model for children ways to be kind, from speaking kindness to volunteering, giving compliments, donating to charity, holding the door open for someone. There's so many ways that children will pick up the habit of kindliness. Saying thank you and please. Children will not learn this unless we model it for them. People are continually learning right and wrong through modeling that they see in others.
All of that can be summarized and it's more caught than taught.
It's more caught than taught. Good one, Eric.
More caught than taught.
Yes, yes.
Children learn what they live.
More
Yes,
is caught than taught.
yes, exactly. Okay. What, Vicki? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Lois.
I'm a member of an Optimist Club, and we go to different schools, and we read a book, says bucket book, and it's how to fill your bucket. And it's an imaginary bucket that's over your head, and what kind things you can do to fill your bucket, and what happens when things are taken out of your bucket. What happens when you're not kind. And so we talk about that, and then give each child their own book.
You give them a bucket too?
We give the bucket to the school, in the classroom.
Middle schools do something similar. They write on sticky notes, they write something nice about somebody else, and then they stick it on the rack. They walk around and do this. And then at the end, they peel off all those sticky notes and read what other people have written about them.
Very good, very good.
No, I'm gonna stand up just because I haven't actually heard every word of it you said, so maybe. I once was in a position where I was looking for a job. We lived in Santa Fe. And my credentials were, I've been a public librarian. And the only job available in all of Santa Fe over several months in the library world was at the state penitentiary, which was just outside of town. And so I got the job to come in and manage the libraries for the state penitentiary of New Mexico. We had 3 sites on, I don't know, about a 5-acre plot, maybe more than that. And I was in the male maximum security part of that prison, where we had halls that were almost a half-mile long. Everything was gray concrete, gray floors, gray bars, gray. It was all gray. And I have limited vision. And I had limited vision then, just beginning. And I'd walk down that long corridor, 15 times a day. And I couldn't see the faces of people coming toward me, but I could smile. So I'd see something coming toward me and I would smile. So I was smiling most of the time going down the corridor because there were always inmates coming back and forth with guards. And at the end of one day, an older inmate, take that with a grain of salt because the average age was 24. An older inmate came up to me and said, "Yours is the only smile I see all day."
Oh.
Wow. And when I left that job, I gave 2 months' notice to everybody who was in that milieu, including the inmates, because in a maximum security prison, people disappear overnight. The inmates are released in the middle of the night. And so I wanted them to know I was actually leaving. And to my great surprise, I was given a tea party by the male maximum security inmates when I left, which had been total surprise, which had been arranged by the inmates. The guards were brought into it, the administration was brought into it. The inmates paid for flowers for me and all the refreshments at the tea party out of their prison-owned earned dollars, which 30 cents an hour. So it was a wonderful tea party as envisioned by male robbers. The crusts were cut off of the little sandwiches, and it was a marvelous event. But it was all the smile in a place with no smiles.
Well, thanks for sharing. Great. Yes.
I was gonna say to the women in the group, when we have young boys or young teenage boys that hold doors open and do things like that, we need to always say, thank you. I always say, thank you for being a gentleman. And I use that term gentleman because I taught with a 5th grade male teacher, and he would get some of these raunchy 5th grade boys. But he always talked to the kids in his class, you're ladies and gentlemen. And I'll tell you, by the end of the 9 months, he never missed changing. He kept changed the behavior of those boys who came in who might be disruptive, because he would say, you're a gentleman and gentlemen don't act that way. So, I mean, but just ladies, make sure you say thank you to those young boys, because a lot of them don't do that, but some of them do.
Well, this little picture here with the homeless person in a sign seeking human kindness brings up, on the internet, they say, brings up the question of tough love. Is tough love kindness? When you don't give to somebody who's asking for help on the street or somewhere else, is that really kindness? Tough love is defined as promoting a person's welfare, especially that of an addict or a child, for example, by enforcing constraints on them or requiring them to take responsibility for their actions. So there are, of course, messages: don't rescue your child from a challenge, teach them how to face it. It's more kind in the long run than it is to show immediate kindness. And there's a lot of talk on the internet about what the psychologists say, using harsh punishments such as spanking children is seen in previous generations as decreasing problem behaviors. That actually evidence today indicates the opposite. Children who are spanked or have other harsh punishments show up with more behavior problems in later teen years and later life, including problems such as depression and moral problems. Also, sending delinquent teens to strict and rigid programs such as boot camps to scare them straight has been shown not to be as effective as previously thought. Boot camps where teens are subjected to military-like discipline can help some, but also can worsen behaviors in the long term. So it is a ongoing study of research for behavioral psychologists. Also, the myth that forced isolation of solitary confinement for criminals in previous generations has been thought to solve behavior problems, but just is shown now to be exacerbating behavior problems, and the research is showing there are better ways to deal with the kind of violence that leads to solitary confinement. What do you think about that?
It reminds me of the book Parenting with Love and Logic,
Yeah.
where the author, one was a retired high school principal, and the other one was a psychologist, and they said the best consequences for children or teens are the natural consequences. That if you get angry and explode at your kid because they got a bad grade, then they just get mad at you. But if you say, you know, I'm really sorry that you got that bad grade, what can you do to fix it? Put the problem back in their court without getting angry, because their consequences, they get a bad grade. That's the best consequence for their actions.
Because it teaches them how to manage themselves.
Exactly.
It takes the authority away from other people
Yep.
doing unto you, and it teaches that person how to modify their own behavior and their
Exactly.
own character.
Exactly.
And so that's where it puts it on them to manage themselves.
Yeah.
And
Don't
it's
put
much
that
more
monkey, yeah,
effective.
take the monkey off my back and put it on yours. Yeah.
And of course, by resources and support and encouragement
Sure.
in ways that are helpful, but yeah, it's about self-management. It's not about forcing. Because then as soon as that force is removed.
That's right.
Carrie, you've just retired from being a counselor at Smoky Hill High School.
2 more weeks, yeah.
2 more weeks?
2 more weeks.
All right. What do you see kids being kind or generally not to each other in high school these days? Or is it a mix of both?
It's a mix.
Of course.
It's a mix. There are some children that are just surviving. They don't have the support, the resources at home, and they are just in survival mode. So you meet everybody where they are.
Yeah.
And then you have some who have every possible resource and squander them.
Yeah.
And you have kids that are everywhere in between. And so I just feel like it's our job as examples to meet them where they are and know that everybody comes with their own set of experiences and help them grow where they are.
Sure. Linda.
I occur. And, one of my frustrations as a teacher was parents coming and trying to rescue their kids. And I would try to explain that
best that they work through the consequences of their behavior. But, boy, a lot of parents that just want to make it all go away.
Well, I like this little graphic also. We don't have to agree on anything to be kind to one another, because that's not only kind of the Methodist slogan, but politics today, terrible, just terrible. We don't see much modeling of kindness and getting along in the field of politics either.
I either read or heard one time that chances are, if you encounter somebody that treats you mean or blows up at you, chances are that you're not the source of their anger. That something's happened to them earlier in the day or earlier in their life, or something's going on in their life. And then you just happen to be the one that gets it, you know? And after hearing that, it helps me a lot to respond, you know, because a lot of times I can say to myself, don't take it personal. This isn't about you, you know, this is something's going on there, you know, and even maybe a time or two have been able to turn that around and, you know, maybe talk to that person about, you know, are you okay? You know, is everything all right with you, you know? And so that has helped me to just know that it's usually not, you're not the one they're mad at. You just get the wrath. Yeah.
That leads us to this next concept too. A lot of us don't think before we speak. We don't have the filters to catch those emotions coming out too. And I wish we could train children better. How do you have and adults, how do you have a filter? How do you stop and think before you let the words out of your mouth? Try and use that as a kindness thing. Kindness should be a way of life, not something you should have to think about twice. So how do we make it a habit? What do you think? There are lots of suggestions on the internet. People tie a ribbon around their finger. Some people, if they have a real problem that they want to remember something that, or wear a t-shirt that says "Be kind." Some people have done that. Our old church in Kansas City just finished a sermon series also on "Be kind" and did lots of things and had t-shirts that they wore and trying to train people to make it a habit.
My daughter and her husband did the Love and Logic training, and I've seen them set their girls down when they've been fussing with each other. I've seen them set their girls down and say, okay, now do this a different way. Argue a different way. Be kinder to each other. Be more creative in your disagreement with each other. And they've made them speak to each other about the subject only in a kind way.
Does it work?
And well, you know, because they've made them, at least they've given them the experience, you know. I mean, I think to me, once you're aware of something, it's always there. When you're not aware of anything, you know, so you know, they're pretty kind, you know, but not always. But I thought that was kind of an interesting thing to do, you know, make them practice it to each other. I know adults that need to do that.
Very tongue in cheek, when our kids were teenagers and would go at each other, I would say, be kind to your sister.
Yeah.
That's the only person who will someday know how crazy your parents are.
Yeah. I love it. That's good.
Birthday was yesterday.
One small act of kindness goes a long way. There's a cute little story I want to read, just a couple paragraphs to you out of this little book called The Power of Nice, and also kindness. The foreword is done by Jay Leno. And he says, yes, he says, when I was asked to be interviewed for this book to provide the foreword, I said yes, not just because I wanted to be nice. I also think being nice is just the right thing to do. Not a theological thing necessarily. It just helps people get along. He says, I recently told a joke on my Tonight Show and got a letter from a woman saying she was offended by the joke. I called her to apologize and say I was sorry I hurt her feelings. For some reason, I was then contacted by several newspapers who heard about my call to this lady, and my apology became headline news. We live in a society today where common courtesy is so uncommon that it can get you a lot of attention sometimes. Even if you get in an auto accident, insurance companies will tell you, don't apologize. It's an admission of guilt. It says, yet my guess is if it's your fault and you do apologize, 9 times out of 10, people will be grateful and probably you won't get in trouble for doing that. So many of today's problems can be solved by simple acts of kindness, in my opinion. Being nice is especially important if you have a TV show. It can be a bully pulpit or an ego booster, as some do today with their TV shows. There's a reason that The Tonight Show with Jay Leno was called The Tonight Show with Jay Leno instead of starring Jay Leno. It's because my mother said, don't say starring Jay. It makes you look like a big shot. Say Tonight Show with Jay Leno. Life is not that hard. Try to give back a little bit and be nice when you can.
It's the right thing to do. That's what you said too. It just becomes a part of who you are because it's the right thing to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thought so too. Not necessarily a theological thing,
Right.
but yeah.
See, I think nice is just common courtesy, but I think that kindness, like Vicki said, is a choice. I think it's a little bit of being nice. Most people are nice, but you choose to be kind and say something kind. Like for me.
See, sorry.
It's okay. It's all right. And like Vicki said, that's okay. Ellen. Last few slides here. Like Vicki said, you never know what someone else is going through. Be kind. They may be carrying a lot. So here's another one that Mark mentioned this in his sermon. He said that kindness is sometimes seen as a weakness. Some people, especially if they've grown up in a tough culture or tough family that emphasizes be strong, don't show kindness. It's seen as weakness. Have you ever run into that? People who have expressed that to you?
I think women run into that more than men do.
Good point.
We're expected to be quiet, meek little people. Like, I'm not that way.
Mhm.
But, you know, if you have a point, if you need to say something, then say it in a kind way.
Mhm. Good point. Okay. And there's so many books out on kindness. Even the actor Keanu Reeves has his Guide to Kindness, 50 Simple Ways to Be Excellent. That one just caught my eye. He really has, this guy has a reputation for really being nice to people, philanthropic, does a lot of kind things for people on the sets of movies that he's on and doesn't get the attention. Yeah, there's a lot of stories about things he has done for people that he's not got any credit for.
Like
And,
Bono.
Pardon me?
Bono does that too.
Bono does it too, of course. A lot of people.
Have you all ever experienced seeing CBS News on Friday evenings has Kindness 101 with Steve Hartman?
No.
Steve Hartman, it's a little human interest story at the end every Friday evening of the 5:30 news, so it's just before 6 o'clock it airs. But you can also Facebook it, Steve Hartman, and it's ordinary people and their kindness stories. And during the pandemic, he did an entire series with his 2 children who were at the time probably maybe 8 and 10 or 8 and 12. And they talked about different themes of kindness, and they went out and interviewed people, and it's fascinating, and it always is moving. just the people that he meets in the little human interest store he does.
You're reminding me of Charles Kuralt.
Yeah, it's similar to
Yeah.
that
I
kind of
miss his
thing.
CBS Sunday
That
morning.
was,
Yeah.
that was a face mask.
So it's kind of in
Yeah.
that same
That
kind,
was a face mask.
so I would highly recommend, if you just need a little pick-me-up, it's always great to listen to his little kindness stories.
We'll look for
Sadly,
that.
it's not relative.
Steve says it's sappy. It
Sadly,
is.
it's not.
It's also
relative.
kind. It's also examples of people's kindness to each other.
Okay. What do you think about the saying, kill somebody with kindness?
Ooh,
If they are grumpy at you or
Oh,
something,
yeah.
just
overwhelmed.
overwhelm
Yeah.
them with kindness to the point of annoying them.
I was just gonna say, not to be negative, sometimes people come on too strong. You wanna back off,
Uh-huh.
like it's all for their ego, not for you.
Good point, Mary. Yeah, they're trying to
Yeah.
get something out of it.
Yeah,
Be nice to
yeah.
you. Have you ever done that with anybody? Tried to overwhelm them with kindness? Have you?
I was at visiting my aunt who was an administrator of a nursing home. This has been years and years ago. And there was the meanest old lady in one of those rooms. I'm telling you, she was mean. And I went in to visit her and she didn't have her mind, and she had a baby doll, which is interesting to me that she was so mean and angry, but yet she had this baby doll, you know? And, but, oh man, I tried really hard and she was just in my face. She was back at me with mean things. And I walked out of there and my aunt goes, well, how'd that go? And I said, you know what? I'm just determined to make that, lady kind. Well, it never happened.
Never.
So,
But you don't have to return rudeness for.
no.
Especially when they're elderly like
Yeah,
that.
oh, yeah,
Right.
they're, yeah.
Well, here's a little graphic that made me think about kids today. Vicky says sometimes after she sends a gift to one of the grandkids, I never got a thank you note or call or anything back. What is up with kids today? I'm waiting for you to send me something, a recognition of my kindness.
I think it's this generation.
Mhm.
They just don't do thank you notes like we did.
Is
Look
that
on your
bad?
phone.
Should we be teaching them?
I
that?
think we should. I think kids need to learn to be
At least
thankful.
acknowledge the fact that you got it.
I can remember sitting our kids down after Christmas and saying, well, you've got these letters to write.
Their parents don't do that today.
Oh, who writes letters anymore? Send them an email.
Well, even that, I would put it in an email.
Just
Email
acknowledge
them,
it. Or a phone
or
call.
a
or
text
anything.
message.
Text.
Yeah, I had a customer one time that purposely intentionally did not sign a check that she sent to her grandson for his birthday. So we would have to call her and, somehow acknowledge the fact that he got the check, but it wasn't signed. So, her daughter, the mother of the son, called the mother, my customer, and said, you forgot to sign his check. And she said, well, yeah, I know that. She said, I kind of did it so that he'd have to call me. And it made the daughter mad. And the daughter said, forget it. We're just gonna tear up your check. I'll give him some
So
money.
much for being kind.
So instead of making the son acknowledge it, she stood up for the son and said, Mom, what a stupid idea, and so there you go.
Family problem.
Backwards.
Steve?
Sure. Lola, sure.
I just wondered if anybody else remembers this. We used to sing it as a round, and this is bringing it into my head, and it's gonna follow me all day. They will know we are Christians by our love.
Yes.
I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Right.
One of my favorite songs to play on this.
Play it. I love it.
Exactly. It's supposed to be a primary behavior for us. James?
I think, as we've discussed here in the class, we need all sorts of reinforcement the media at home, schools, being a good neighbor. One of our sermons here at church emphasized the root stem of kindness, kin, of family. You were talking, Vicki, and Mary reminded me, we did this with our kids. Treat your brother, talking to the sister and so forth. Seeing us as family, Hesed, which you remember Mark talking about, is more than just being nice. It's loving action because it's transformative and essential to the well-being of all. David Brooks, New York Times, had an article, or it was quoted, I guess, on PBS when we were listening. With diversity in our country and society and world, and if you can't relate to people because they look different, they talk different, et cetera, and so on, at least connect to their humanity. That bespeaks of seeing ourselves as a family. We're a family. And if we can inculcate our common humanity, perhaps it will make it easier for us to be kind, to be more natural. It won't have to be contrived. You won't need to wear ribbons or these are helpful. No, these are helpful. These are reinforcing. But family, the root stem, kindness and kinder, seeing ourselves as being one family, humanity. And that sort of resonates, I think, in today's world. The more we can reinforce in different levels, certainly at church, our cornerstone, as I walked here to class, 2005, look out in the atrium there, in the lobby area. It quotes Micah, loving kindness. Oh, practice kindness, it says, and walk humbly before your God. Practice. And there are a lot of modalities of ways we can practice this, but I think it's the cumulative, but particularly seeing ourselves as family. Christians, non-Christians, believers, non-believers, doesn't make any difference, black, white, we're family, we're all family. Doesn't that make it a little easier to be kind?
Sure.
Our existence is
We are
at
the
stake.
world.
Our existence is at stake because we're a human family.
Right.
That's what Brooks was saying, connect with our humanity. When everything else fails,
Thank you, Gene. John.
From my perception, part of what we're talking about here is attributes. The attribute of kindness, the attribute of loyalty. What works, Keith? You know all about scouting. How do you cultivate these attributes? Do you give them a ribbon for being nice, or what do you think works?
Well, I would tell you that when you become a scout, the first badge you earn is your scout badge. And in most troops, you learn the 6th point of the scout law, which is a scout is kind. And you're given a token. And you're told, don't tell your parents about this token. Don't tell your brothers and sisters and your friends about it. Just stick it in your pocket. And every day, strive to participate in the scout slogan, to do a good turn daily, do an act of kindness daily. And when you recognize that you've done that, take that out of your pocket and put it in the other pocket. Take it from your left pocket to your right pocket. But you don't tell anyone, not even your own parents. That's just a thing you quietly exercise. And when you have your Scoutmaster conference for your next rank, to become a first class or a star or whatever, that's the only time your Scoutmaster will ever say, what pockets is your token?
Very good. Well, thank you, everybody. Go ahead and then we'll.
I was just gonna
wrap
say,
up.
if you're giving out cash to people, on the street, give without expectations.
Mhm.
Don't give it expecting them to do, they may or may not use that money as you wish. The
Right.
point is to give, because if you have it, we're called to give. If they choose to use it, what we would consider unwisely, that's on them, that's not on us. Our job is to help if we can.
Well said. Thanks, everybody, for sharing today.
Yeah, nice class.
Lord, help us go forth and be kind. Amen. See you next week.